Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, late Friday night. Just kind of some shocking news coming out of the USC program. Offensive lineman Emmanuel Pregnon hitting the transfer portal. There's two different conversations you have to have. One, I want to have the conversation about player retention. And it's never a flashy conversation to have in this era of college football, right? As college football fans, we all like to talk about the new shiny players that are coming into the program through the transfer portal. Player retention is becoming a massive part of the sport. You look at all the best teams across the country, they don't lose the players they don't want to lose. You know, the good players on their roster that they know will be guys for them, they don't lose through the transfer portal. Now, you'll lose some guys who are depth pieces. You'll lose some guys who might not be impact guys, but player retention is becoming such an important conversation. And I would argue that USC in this transfer portal cycle, it hasn't been great. Right? You look at a guy like Emmanuel Pregnon. You look at a guy like Quentin Joyner, who I thought was going to be one of the better running backs in the Big Ten in 2025, hitting the portal. There were players on this roster that USC did not want to lose that they did. So I first want to start with that conversation. And I think secondly, this is just, like it or not, part of the game. You got to recruit your guys all 12 months of the season or 12 months of the year. This is going to happen. Where does USC go from here? I spent my Saturday morning kind of deep diving some offensive linemen that are still available in the portal. Want to talk about some of those names. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the USC fans, I think most importantly, would love to hear from y'all in the comment section. A lot of different angles, a lot of different takes to be had about this situation. Whether you agree with the boys, whether you disagree, would love to hear from you guys. The amount of support y'all have shown, whether we're talking about the good or bad. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, I'll give you the tee box. When you saw this news pop up Friday night, what went through your head?
I mean, it's kind of another kind of black eye in terms of USC's ability to kind of do this. And you don't see teams like Penn State losing their top dogs. Like Abdul Carter, everybody in the country would have wanted him in the portal last year. He's not in the portal. You don't see Georgia, Tate Ratledge, and their offensive linemen, who, again, pretty much every team in the country would want. Texas.
Here's a good example. Christian Miller hit the transfer portal. You know, a lot of USC fans were excited about him and said, hey, we're going to make it work. We want to keep you. We know you're a good football player. We're going to retain you. I think the door might still be open. From what I've been reading Saturday morning, there's no clear, well, we'll see it. As of right now, we're hearing there's no clear contender. We'll see if there is a clear contender that pops up. But I think the door still be open. And I think for USC, it's important to stay in contact with them and say, hey, how can we figure this out so that you're back on this roster in 2025?
Because again, it's not all I think a lot of it'll cry NIL and all that. I look at USC, if that's a problem, then Lincoln Riley needs to fix that. Because I look and this isn't a perfect proxy for school wealth, if you will. But outside of Michigan, there's no team in the Big Ten that has a bigger endowment than USC. And that is somewhat reflective of what type of money this school can raise when they want to put it to a certain cause. And if they can't get that for football to be competitive in this world, they don't need to be the best necessarily. I don't think Penn State's the richest or deepest pocketed school, but you don't see their best players in the portal. I think they do what they need to do to retain guys. I think they've created a culture where guys want to be. And that's probably the most alarming thing about guys like Pregnon, especially at this point in the cycle, guys like Quentin Joyner, even a Deuce Robinson, who, again, I don't know that he was top of the list to retain, if you will. You probably wanted Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane a little bit more, but he's not a guy you necessarily want to see hit the portal. It's hard to tell from the outside what's going on, but it can't just be about NIL and changing landscape. Something's got to be fixed because you can't have those two guys hitting the portal.
I'll say this. If it is about NIL, I think that falls on the head coach, Lincoln Riley. You said it best. The endowment, again, it's not a perfect way to evaluate it, but it is a way to say this USC, this institution can raise a lot of money. This football program should be able to raise a lot of money, and like it or not, that is part of being a head coach in this current era of college football. You know, Sherrone Moore was up doing an interview saying, hey, over 30% of my days sometimes are spent with pertaining, I guess you'd say, to NIL. It's a big part of it. And if Lincoln Riley's not willing to do it, then maybe being a head coach at a big program like USC ain't for you.
Because even you hear guys like Drinkwitz at Missouri, I mean, talking about what he does in terms going around the state and calling their donors, calling the businesses in that area and trying to get them on board and like
Part of it.
be part of this program. It's like he's in a really good spot. He's at a very wealthy school. He's in a very wealthy city, obviously, with Los Angeles, and they are the premier program. I don't care what UCLA fans say. USC, when USC's getting it done, is the program you want to be at. So again, that's where you get into it is like, well, is it NIL? What is it like a culture of like, do people want to be at this program? Are they having fun? Is it a place where they feel like they're kind of thriving? Because that's a huge part of it too. That again, I think the knee-jerk reaction is typically to talk about NIL, but man, there's like a culture of the program that's certainly a big part of this situation too. And again, you just look, some of the things that have happened this offseason, they definitely raise your eyebrows a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if I take it to the culture point yet because, look, if Emmanuel Pregnon's just getting an incredible offer to hit the portal, like you can't blame these kids to not turn down some of that type of stuff. That conversation is more, and it kind of goes into this is why you want to make sure.
Why I don't like inherently accept that excuse is like you don't think Abdul Carter gets insane offers. You don't think a handful of Penn State offensive linemen. And I use Penn State because they're not like Texas and Oregon. They're thought to be like the bullies of the NIL world, if you will. Penn State doesn't lose their kids. Their kids hang around that program.
Yeah, I do think that's fair. And there is that line between, look, a guy like Emmanuel Pregnon, we all know how important he is to the USC offensive line. The difference between a guy like Zachariah Branch is, hey, we all know Zachariah Branch is commanding a lot of resources, so to speak. And Lincoln Riley even said in an interview, hey, we got to look at the production that we're getting from these players and evaluate, is it worth it? And I think we all kind of came to the same assumption. Yeah, Zachariah Branch, a special talent. I'm not sure if he's worth it going into year 3 because, quite frankly, didn't really see the development after year 1 going into year 2. But player retention does seem to be a thing that is kind of raising your eyebrows for USC. Emmanuel Pregnon, Quentin Joyner, and to an extent Deuce Robinson were guys that you did not want to lose from this roster that you lost. Second conversation, I guess maybe a little bit of a side note. This is why it's so important to recruit and develop on the offensive line. Losing a starting guard should not create as big of a fire as it is for USC. All of a sudden you're looking at USC on the offensive line. Look, I feel decent about the tackles. Elijah Page is going to be a stud at left tackle. Tobias Raymond / Justin, I feel like can be solid at right tackle. But all of a sudden you're looking on the inside and say, we got some massive question marks. And that's why you got to make sure you're recruiting and kind of stockpiling offensive linemen from the high school ranks, because all of a sudden you're looking and say, we got big time question marks about USC on the offensive line. That's the negative part, right? And it should look, you can't ignore it. Let's talk about how we get better, right? I think you got to take a look at some of these guys, right? TJ Shanahan from Texas A&M, starting caliber guy in the SEC, a guy that we know can play. It should immediately become on USC's radar. You don't have the luxury of betting on guys right now. You got to go get guys that can play and start at the Power 4 level. TJ Shanahan being number one. Here's another one, Dale. DJ Wingfield from Purdue. Here's what I like about DJ Wingfield, and we've already talked about him, so I'll keep it short. Started all 12 games for Purdue at guard in 2024, but during his time in 2023 at New Mexico, granted G5 level, started at right tackle. And started damn well. 316 pass per opportunities, 1 sack, only 7 quarterback pressures, some elite right tackle numbers. So you're bringing a guy like DJ Wingfield. He's a guy that can definitely play guard for you, but also might give you your right tackle versatility as well. Last name I'll say, and Dill, this is a Big Ten guy that Big Zy Chrysler. One of the benefactors, you might say, of the JUCO ruling. He's got another year of eligibility, has played a lot of football for Illinois over the last 3 seasons, and a road grader in the run game. That's something that we talk about is you look at USC in 2025 and something they might be leaning into is that rushing attack. Zy Chrysler would be another good answer at guard as well.
And you go back to like that 2022 season, and he's had some inconsistencies perhaps over the past couple of years. But
yes,
man, in 2022, when that offensive line was rolling, he was part of that.
Part of it.
Like, these are some guys here. These guys all should be going to the NFL. They're big, physical, moving dudes.
And what I would say here is this is better than losing Elijah Page. Much better. It's hard to find starting caliber tackles.
Yeah,
there just ain't that many of them. And I'm not trying to underplay the importance of Emmanuel Pregnon because he's a very good football player that could be playing on Sundays next year. Finding plug-and-play guards is a lot easier. And it's a lot easier to hide guards as well. And so I don't think this is a disaster for USC, but it does probably just raise some concerns that we wanted to talk about.
It raises the concerns not only about the play on the field, because that kind of is what it is, but that's just like, again, that's the type of guy that you don't want to see routinely leaving this program. And probably over the past few years, you've probably seen too much of it. And if I'm a USC fan, again, not like fire everybody kind of mode yet, but like it certainly raises the eyebrows, be like, well, this needs to stop. And whatever needs to get fixed, it needs to get fixed, because Lincoln Riley's making too much money. Everyone else on the coaching staff's making too much money for this kind of thing to frankly happen.
Look, there's a reason Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma to come to USC. It's because we all know what this USC program can be in the NIL era of college football. And it's just like you're not seeing it seemingly right now. You're not seeing it play out that way. We'll see how it goes forward. We'll obviously break down the commitments that come in the next couple of days. I'm sure we're going to see USC make an effort to address the offensive line. Let it fly in the comment section. Many of y'all probably sitting there saying, hey, these two guys are idiots. Would love to hear. I mean, like that's the beauty of it. There's a lot of different takes to have. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.